I'm pleased to continue my remarks. I want to talk about Flinders University, and I'm pleased that the Vice-Chancellor of Flinders University, Professor Colin Sterling, an outstanding Australian, wrote to me and some colleagues in the Parliament on the 30th of October, and perhaps I'll read his letter to the Parliament, which summarises a number of the issues that I might otherwise have raised. Dear Mr Gardner, Flinders University acknowledges that the Honourable Connie Benares and the Honourable Sarah Game MLC have confirmed they will support the Adelaide University Bill to establish the new Adelaide University, created through the amalgamation of the University of Adelaide and the University of South Australia. Further, Flinders acknowledges that in addition to the $100 million Student Equity Support Fund for the new university, the government has also committed to creating an additional $20 million fund to support students from regional South Australia. The state government has also committed to a $200 million research fund to support the new university, purchasing $114.5 million in land from the university and $30 million for measures to attract international students. Separately, the government will also deliver a $40 million equity support fund for Flinders University students from low SES backgrounds. Finally, to support the implementation phase of the new Adelaide University, the government will appoint an independent expert with experience in higher education to work with the government, universities and other stakeholders, including representatives of staff and students, in relation to increasing access to higher education for low socioeconomic students and students from regional South Australia. Flinders University acknowledges advocacy from members of the Joint Committee on the Establishment of Adelaide University for a strong South Australian university sector where institutions are competing on a level playing field. Flinders is also grateful for the government's undertaking to create a $40 million fund for Flinders University to enable us to offer low SES students who choose Flinders the same equity of access as provided by the government for students that choose the new university. This is an important initiative creating equity of opportunity for students from low socioeconomic groups. Flinders currently educates approximately 40% of all low SES students who attend any of the 3 public universities in South Australia. As such, a $40 million student equity fund for Flinders is appropriate relative to the $100 million equity fund for the new Adelaide University. The creation of an additional $20 million fund to support students from regional South Australia would be welcome, but the allocation of that fund entirely to the new university is unfair to those regional students who would choose Flinders University. A fundamental principle underpinning healthy competition and student choice is that equity incentives should apply to students, not institutions. Flinders students come from across South Australia, with over 2,500 regional and remote students studying with Flinders, representing 13.4% of our domestic student cohort. Flinders University also has a substantial regional network in South Australia, with locations in Barossa, Berry, Mount Gambier, Murray Bridge, Renmark and Victor Harbour. Furthermore, there are a number of course offerings such as paramedicine and nuclear engineering and regional campuses such as the Riverland, where Flinders is the only higher education provider in the region. By only targeting state government support for students from regional South Australia via the new Adelaide University, students who may wish to pursue higher education with Flinders will not be eligible for regional scholarships and packages via the additional $20 million. Equity must be equitable. Therefore, to redress this, Flinders proposes either equitable access to the endowed additional $20 million fund for students from regional South Australia, irrespective of the institution they choose, or a commensurate additional $8 million, i.e. 40%, to the Flinders Students Support Fund to support students from regional South Australia who choose Flinders University. In relation to growing South Australia's share of funding for high-quality research, in our submission to the Joint Committee into the establishment of Adelaide University, Flinders University advocated for equitable investment in research across the sector. The state government's well-intended proposal to establish a new $200 million research fund to support Adelaide University's research initiatives is important acknowledgement that an uplift in state investment is needed. However, investing in research in one institution while excluding the other inhibits competition, undermines the potential of the university sector in South Australia, and could artificially inflate the success of the new Adelaide University at the expense of Flinders. Having achieved the highest research growth rate, 140%, of any Australian university over the last 5 years, It is disappointing that Flinders' research impact and trajectory has been overlooked by not committing commensurate investment in our research endeavours. Flinders recognises that the new university will have additional costs associated with merger over the short term, and the research fund is designed, at least in part, to assist the new university's research activities during the merger process. We also recognise that while Flinders University will incur some costs associated with the merger, including the restructuring of various legal partnerships with the University of Adelaide and University of South Australia, our costs will be marginal compared to those incurred by the new university in the first 3 years. However, the research fund is to be legislated in perpetuity and thereby advantages the new university over Flinders University with ongoing taxpayers' investment over the long term. To redress this, Flinders renews its recommendation for state government investment in research to be applied equitably across the sector by either equitable access to the $200 million research fund to support research initiatives, or a commensurate additional $80 million Flinders Research Fund for Flinders University research initiatives. In relation to the independent expert to support implementation of the new Adelaide University, Flinders University welcomes the government's announcement that it will appoint an independent expert with experience in higher education to work with the new government, universities and other stakeholders to support the implementation of the new Adelaide University. While not party to the new Adelaide University, Flinders has already incurred costs associated with the merger of the University of Adelaide and the University of South Australia, and we anticipate incurring more as the complex process of merger is now implemented in earnest. Flinders respectfully requests that a truly independent expert is appointed as soon as possible, with a mandate to achieve equitable outcomes that do not disadvantage Flinders in favour of the new Adelaide University. Furthermore, Flinders requests the establishment of an instrument that will ensure that costs incurred by Flinders as a result of the merger of the University of Adelaide and the University of South Australia are not borne by Flinders. I'd be happy to discuss these matters at a time convenient to you. Please note, following requests for Flinders University's position on the proposed Adelaide University Bill, this information has also been shared with various members of the Legislative Council. Yours sincerely, Professor Colin Sterling, President and Vice-Chancellor of Flinders University. I had intended, sir, prior to receiving that letter, to spend some of this, the remarks that I was going to make in this period talking about Flinders University, the justification for the commitment that the opposition has made, if we form government in 2026, to implementing a Flinders Research Fund, and some further reflections on the disparity and the inequity of that disparity and the, I think, damage that it has the potential to do to the sector over the long term, if not corrected. I'm going to save some time by just reflecting that I agree with pretty much everything that has been said by Professor Sterling in his letter. He puts a figure on proposed funds for Flinders University. The opposition at this stage does not. We'll consider that figure between now and the next election. But if we're talking about something commensurate with what Adelaide University's research fund has been granted, then the suggestion from Flinders University is not an unreasonable one. It's not the only suggestion that's on the table. But I think one of the key things we need to understand is that the reason the Adelaide University and the University of South Australia have been so eager for there to be funding provided through the merger transition process is because the process itself will create risk that the universities have recognised, and they are seeking to invest to mitigate that risk. It'll create complexity, it'll create administrative burden. You'll have to merge two IT systems, for example. There will be costs to this that will be borne by the university in the hundreds of millions of dollars. And for them to apply only their own funding to meeting that challenge would seriously eat into the capital that they have available to certainly meet all of their obligations should a significantly bad event happen, such as indeed we saw just 3 years ago with the pandemic. So the universities have no appetite to put themselves in a position where they would be unable to meet their obligations should that happen. And so they put to the government that they needed support for that, and they would, in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars. The government put back to them suggestions. Indeed, the package that has been released publicly is to an extent in negotiation, but certainly in relation to the research fund and the equity fund, $320 million, is a mechanism that the government has identified that has a modest impact on the state budget over the course of the forward estimates. The capital sits in the state balance, and I commend the Treasurer and his department to the extent that in our further election commitment of establishing a Flinders Research Fund, we propose to use a similar mechanism. There will be a disbursement of funds to the new institution every year in perpetuity. Over the course of the forward estimates, we're talking about a modest amount. The university is satisfied in meeting its obligations because over the next 10 years, it'll disburse in the order of a couple $100 million to the new university over 10 years, not over the forward estimates, a much more modest amount, but over 10 years, a couple $100 million. And over 50 years, we're into the billions. And I won't be here in 100 years, I hope my children are, but we will be serious money by this stage from the state taxpayers to the new institution. And that's okay if it's going to realise its ends, because that investment in research is meant to have a multiplying effect on the benefit for South Australia. But the benefit for South Australia is only to be realised if it is a net benefit to South Australia. That is, that if the benefit is realised to the University of Adelaide at the expense of Flinders University, then that is not a net benefit to South Australia. And I go back to the phrase I've used a number of times. The research fund, in many ways, the thing that I suspect it will do most often is to be invested in research projects. It'll be invested in human capital. It'll be invested in exceptional individuals who will be at Adelaide University doing exceptional research. And indeed, investment in their projects could be in terms of infrastructure, it could be in terms of supplies, but mostly it'll be in terms of paying significant salaries to significantly, uniquely gifted individuals. Flinders has a number of these people, and a number of them are operating in research in similar areas to what Adelaide is doing. And it's a hell of a lot easier if Adelaide University is seeking to implement one of its 6 pillars of research excellence. Flinders University operates in most of those pillars too. If Adelaide University is seeking to recruit exceptional individuals that are gifted and are going to impact positively on their rankings in these areas, if they're advertising, they might not even be seeking to poach from Flinders, but you can't stop somebody from applying for a job. And it's much easier to change your commute across town than it is to move your family to a different state or a different country. This is why the Vice-Chancellor of Flinders University has gone to the committee and explained at great length his concerns. It's why he's written to us. It's why the Liberal Party is surprised that in the crossbenchers' advocacy to the government on this matter to get support for Flinders University, they exclusively seem to have focused on the equity question and not the research question. The equity question is good. It's good that there's an equity fund for Flinders University. That would have been something we would have put forward, and I'm pleased that the government has included it in the final package. But the research fund is critical to realising the opportunities for South Australia's economic future. And that net benefit cannot be realised unless there is a level of parity in state government investment for Flinders University and Adelaide University. It needn't necessarily start at the same time. As the Vice-Chancellor of Flinders University identifies, we acknowledge there's a transition cost for Adelaide University in the merger process. And offsetting some of the costs of merger is indeed part of the purpose for the fund. But the government has chosen, rather than giving a one-off grant to the new university, it's chosen to set up these perpetual funds, managed by the excellent people that manage the state government funds, and, as I understand it, seeking a return of 7.5% a year on average. That may well change, but certainly we're talking about at least $12 million a year. So, I think this highlights the benefit that will come to our state if the Liberal Party's commitment to a Flinders Research Fund is adopted. I urge the government to consider implementing that, if not over the next few weeks, then certainly prior to the election. We will congratulate and welcome the government's interest if they see the argument as being fair and commit what is a relatively modest resource in the context of the overall budget. But to achieve the outcomes we're seeking to achieve, it's a tremendously important modest investment. It'll unlock further federal funding and it'll unlock opportunity for South Australia. And would you like me to seek leave to...
You can continue, and we'll just
for a minute, sir.
pass
It'll
it
unlock
down.
opportunity for South Australia. And I think, therefore, it is certainly worthy of the government's consideration. And if they don't, then the Liberal Party will deliver it in government after the March 2026 election. There is a short list of things I still wish to raise in the context of the motion. The particular points raised in the minority report highlight questions about the opportunities for South Australia. Because ultimately, and we'll talk a bit more about this when the bill comes to the chamber, the Liberal Party will support the bill. We have not had all of our reservations addressed by the government. We have had some of our reservations addressed since the committee reported by the University Vice-Chancellors, who've been very proactive in their engagement and very positive in a number of the things they have addressed. I read into the Hansard yesterday the letter that they wrote to the opposition. But I think those risks, significant as they are, must be measured against the opportunity that does exist for South Australia. And I think it will be useful for me to conclude my remarks on addressing why I think that opportunity is worth the consideration. I seek leave to continue my remarks, sir.